Thank you very much. Good evening. On behalf of the Potrero Hill Democratic Club, the Potrero Boosters Neighborhood Association, and Pre-Fund, I want to welcome you to the Potrero District 10 Supervisor Debate. My name is J.R. Eppler. I serve as president of the Potrero Boosters and am on the board of the Democratic Club, and I will be your moderator this evening. Shamann Walton.
Good evening. First of all, let me just say how excited I am to be here this evening. As someone who spent a lot of time here at the neighborhood house as a young man, I used to love coming up here. We would come up here and watch plays. We would have art projects downstairs. We would come up here and have a good time. And what we really look forward to is the summertime to get those free lunches, because while our parents were out working, we could come up here and still have something to eat during the middle of the day. And then it's exciting to come back again because just about 20 years ago, I started working at the Potrero Hill Family Resource Center, right in the development on 85 Turner Terrace. And I started off as a program assistant, a school readiness coordinator, and eventually became the director of the Family Resource Center. And during that time period, I had an opportunity to work with so many people in this room to bring Mandarin immersion to Star King Elementary School. We did community job and health fairs. We started off doing them in development, then we brought them over to St. Gregory's so that we could bring the homeowner and the public housing community together. And then one of the things that I love to talk about is how we started the Peace March in 2005 with the community. And we started them both with Star King and Daniel Webster and had our young people, and they said, we're not going to tolerate violence in our community anymore. And 13 years later, that Peace March is still going on. Live Oak is a part of it. All of our schools are a part of it. All of our CBOs are a part of it. So what I'm trying to say is, it's exciting to work and talk about affordability, fighting homelessness, bringing our communities together, making sure our communities are safe, fighting for more open space, and doing it with the people who I've worked with for several decades to get work done, not only in Potrero Hill, but across this district. I'm excited about tonight's debate. We're going to get the chance to talk about some of the issues that we've already been solving together and let you know that if we're fortunate enough to get elected on November 6th, we'll continue our work together and be ready to lead from day one. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamann. Uzuri, Pease-Greene.
Hello, everybody. How are you? So, I am happy to see so many faces out there and so many smiling faces, whether you're here for Shamann or Theo or Tony, it doesn't matter. It's just great to see a whole group of people here in this room. So in this room, we have had lots of meetings, community meetings. So I work for the developer, which at this time, I wanted to work for the developer because I wanted to be on the inside to see what was going on. So I live in Potrero Hill Public Housing right there on Dakota Street. And I remember somebody telling me that I couldn't run for supervisor because I lived in the public housing. And that was actually the deciding factor for me to run for supervisor. Because I need our young people to understand that no matter where you live, you can do anything that you want to do as long as you are being productive and doing it positive. I am working on my master's right now in public administration. I have my BA in human service management. I have been clean and sober for 9.5 years now and have helped start a walking school bus, not brush, a walking school bus, as well as we've done a lot of different things inside the community, and not just for the public housing, but for the surrounding community as well, because it is for all of us to live together and grow together. So as you ask your questions, there are 4 of us that are really dominating and very good candidates up here. And so you have a good choice to choose from, so thank you.
Thank you, Uzuri. Theo Ellington. First.
Are we on? There we go. First off, I want to say thank you to the boosters, to Pre-Fund, and also the Potrero Hill Democratic Club. As JR mentioned, my name is Theo Ellington. I'm a native-born San Franciscan. I own my home with my wife down in the Hunters Point Shipyard. And I like to begin these sort of debates with telling folks a little bit about my family background and how we ended up in Bayview. My grandfather moved here from the South. Like many of us in this room, he was searching for a better opportunity. He got a good paying job. He rubbed his pennies together to purchase a house. If my grandfather was alive today, he he would not be able to afford to live in San Francisco. My mother raised my brother and I, who's here in the audience, on less than $30,000 a year. If we were to replay that, my mother, my brother and I would not be able to afford to live in San Francisco. Too many people are feeling that same struggle. Our city is being squeezed and our neighborhoods are feeling the pressure. When I'm out knocking on doors, I hear too many stories of folks leaving their homes in San Francisco rather than their hearts. I am ready for this debate. I'm interested in talking about the subjects. I'm interested in digging deep into the dialogues around housing, around transit, around parking, and quality of life. Thank you all. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Tony Kelly.
Hey guys, Tony Kelly, born in San Francisco, lived here on Connecticut Street for 24 years now. Can I ask you just to look up for a second? If you see these metal pipes on the top here, the very first job I had in San Francisco was installing this light grid, working in this room for the Julian Theater here at the Potrero Hill neighborhood house. So when I say I've built theaters here, 18th Street, south of Market, I mean literally doing the heavy lifting, bringing in the hardware, installing it, and getting my hands dirty. That's a lot of similarities between that and my policy platform because that's similar. It's doing the heavy lifting, knocking on doors, drafting legislation, writing policy, vetting it again with the community, then trying to get that through at City Hall. So my policy is about a bunch of things that look good on paper in an election year. Their policies have been worked out by working with communities for 15 years for what they demand and trying to bring those voices to City Hall. And this year, finally, City Hall is just beginning to catch up. So for 15 years, we've worked very closely with neighbors to save Daniel Webster Elementary, to create the first green benefit district in the country for funding for our neighbor-created open space, to save Star King open space, to fight for a better, more honest cleanup at the shipyard, and to try to get development without displacement that can keep people in their homes. So I'm running for District 10 seat on the Board of Supervisors because I think I have a different idea what the job of supervisor is than almost anyone else running in the city. It's to listen to the communities of the district and to bring those voices directly to City Hall so we have direct influence on what happens to us. That's why I want to have neighborhood office hours every single day of the year in the neighborhoods. It's why I wanted us to go first on planning and zoning our neighborhoods, but instead of letting developers lead, we lead and they follow. I look forward to talking about this and a lot of other policy differences over the course of tonight. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today.
Thank you, Tony Kelly. Okay, we're going to dive in on an issue that came up in these introductions a little bit, and that is the issues around development and housing in the city. We're going to start down on Tony and come back this way. The question is, and you have 2 minutes to respond, some people say that we're in a housing crisis. Others call it an affordability crisis. Which is it? How do we solve it? Tony Kelly.
Yeah. It's an affordability crisis and has been for a long time. You can Google this. Back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I was saying this. It said in the pages of the Bay Guardian, we don't have a housing crisis, we have an affordable housing crisis. And the way to get out of it is with 100% public housing, on 100% public land, with 100% public bank. We have the richest city ever in the history of the world. We have the resources to do this ourselves. And the history of the city so far, for decades now, has been that we don't have any problems out here that can't be solved without someone making a profit on it. And that has led to housing that we can't afford. And especially in Bayview and Viz Valley, it's even worse, where that median income is less than what qualifies for the city's affordable housing. So we need to have a very serious conversation about this. We need to stop housing used as a commodity. And that's corporate rentals, short-term rental abuse, second homes, all the way down the line. So we need to build our own housing because the most expensive things in housing are the cost of the land and the cost of the money. So using a public bank and our own reserves and our own land reduces the cost of both of those things. So we can build more housing that people can afford without subsidy and without taxes because it's cheaper. It's just the construction cost to build it. And again, I'll leave it at that at the moment.
right, thank you. Theo Ellington.
So I think it is both. I don't think it's an either or thing. We have a housing crisis and we have an affordability crisis. And I've said since day one, my top priority on this campaign is affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing, in that order. And there are a couple of things that I think we can do. First off, I think we need to streamline affordable housing projects. When I was commissioner for OCII, we, under my tenure, we approved 4,000 units of housing. Fast forward 6 years later, only 1,500 housing units have been built. And of those, 242 of those for homeless, formerly for homeless families. So therein lies one of the issues, is our approval process. It takes way too long to build affordable housing. I would say the second thing is the city can use its land use authority. We've got to figure out how to take advantage of the small sites acquisition program. We've got to figure out how to legalize accessory dwelling units. When I'm knocking on doors in Potrero and Bayview and Viz Valley, we see multiple families living in units. We need to legalize those units and allow for folks who want to earn an extra income to make more housing available on the market. And the last thing I will do is, again, underscoring the city's role and the city's responsibility for exercising its land use authority. We need to build more affordable housing, period.
Thank you. Uzuri.
Hi. So it's a both. So you look at, is it affordable for who? Can you hear me now? Okay. So it's a both. And then you have to look at affordable, but affordable for who? So if you're working at McDonald's, or you're a teacher, or you're working at Jack in the Box, or you're a janitor, you should be able to afford to live here. It doesn't matter how much money you make. So what it happens is that we need to make it to where developers have a balance of market rate, a balance of affordable, and a balance of lower income. Because right now here, the affordable, low, and actually right now they say the poverty rate is 6 figures. 6 figures here. So that means that I am super poor, and then some of y'all are super, super poor, and then we won't even go any past that. So it has to be a balance. There is no way that it took almost 5 years for the environmental impact report to get passed just for the rebuild for Potrero Hill, but yet for the Warrior Stadium, it took a year. So I agree with what Theo was saying, that it has to be fast tracked. And that's one of the things as supervisors, we all need to work together. No matter who becomes supervisor, that's going to be the top priority, is making sure that the red tape is no longer red tape for us. And when I say us, I mean low income, median income as well. Because if you're a teacher and you can't afford to live here, we are losing so many teachers and they're going into other cities because of the fact that they can't afford to live here. And our children deserve to have a better education. And our children deserve to be able to look at a teacher and actually see themselves.
Thank you. Shamann.
So it's definitely an affordability crisis that has led to a housing crisis, that has led to a homeless crisis, that has led to increasing crimes like property thefts and people breaking windows because it is hard to afford to live in San Francisco. And I'm excited to hear people talk about what they want to do and what they think they can do about affordable housing and affordability. I'm actually the only one up here who has built all 100% affordable housing, making sure that people do not spend more than a third of their income on housing. That is true affordable housing, all 50% AMI at levels to make sure that you are not spending all of your income to pay for where you live. Currently working on 156 more units of all affordable housing. But the way we do that and make sure indigenous populations get to stay and people from San Francisco, you aggressively go after certificate of preference holders. We have books, laws in the books on the place to make sure that we can keep families here and bring families back. Actually, when we built our first 59 units, we brought 12 certificate of preference holders back from other Bay Area cities. We need to enforce our neighborhood preference legislation to make sure that people in the surrounding community, over 40%, automatically get first dibs at the lottery when we have affordable housing. These are the policies that I've fought for along with other leaders in this city, and these are the things that we're going to continue to do. I'm not going to wait until November 6th to fight for all of you and to make sure that we have an opportunity to be housed. We are already doing that work. And you can't address affordability without addressing employment. That's why we're training folks and connecting to careers, to jobs in various sectors of employment, construction, retail, hospitality, all across the board to make sure that people have an opportunity to live and work in communities that they're a part of. And last, the city needs to acquire land, purchase land, build our own affordable housing. That's right. Use, exactly like Theo said, small sites. The city needs to acquire those small sites. The city needs to acquire vacant lots, build all affordable housing. And we need the community to support us and make us do that together. Because at the end of the day, we can all talk about this, but I'm someone who's going to be ready to lead from the moment we go in, if elected on November 6th.
Thank you. All right, we'll begin with Uzuri Pease-Greene on this question. This year on the ballot, on the California state ballot, we have Proposition 10, which would repeal the Costa-Hawkins Act, if passed. That would allow cities to have much greater flexibility with their rent control policies. If the repeal of the Costa-Hawkins passes, what changes to San Francisco's rent control would you support as supervisor, if any?
So my mother and my sister live in a rent control unit. It's 4 units in that rent control building. Nobody will move. There is a lady that has been living there and her son now is in his 40s. She won't move. So that's part of what the problem is that a lot of the rent control buildings, once somebody moved out, it was no longer rent control, which meant that they could raise the price up to $4,000, $5,000, and $6,000. So if it is a rent control unit, my preference is that it stays a rent control unit. And that I will work very hard to make sure that it does stay a rent control unit, which means that we have to work with the homeowners, we have to work with the business owners, and we have to work with the residents that are in that community. But it's not just doing that, it's also working with the other supervisors, not just District 10, but all the supervisors so that everybody is on board. Because if only the supervisor in District 10 is working on this and not the rest of the supervisors, then it won't work. So you need to have everybody on board. I am all for rent control because that is the way my mother, who is about to be 80 years old, is able to stay in San Francisco. Without that rent control building, she wouldn't be able to live here. And without that rent control building, my sister wouldn't be able to live there. And so that's how a lot of people have been able to stay in San Francisco. And so it's just working, looking at what has worked and look at what has not worked. And then restructure what has not worked to make it work with what has worked. Did that make sense to y'all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, going into the 11th grade in high school, my mother, my brother, and I were evicted out of our unit. And that is something that I would not wish on anybody. The empty feeling that comes associated with not having a place to go is not something that I would put on anybody. We, as a city, JR, as you alluded to earlier, we're amidst an extreme housing crisis, an extreme affordability crisis. So for me, the conversation has to be around, A, how do we build more housing in the city? B, how do we protect the current tenants who are here? And 3, how do we continue to increase the pipeline of housing opportunities in this very district? There are a number of opportunity sites that are here in this district. If you look down 3rd Street, if you look at our empty lots, if you look at our sort of clustered gas stations, there are so many opportunities to build more housing, and I think that's where the conversation needs to start. We have too many people deciding whether to pay their rent or to put food on the table. And just because you are a landlord or you happen to own property, it doesn't mean you're rich or you have a lot of money. Everyone is feeling the constraints, particularly here in this district. When I'm out knocking on doors at Potrero Hill, I hear families talking about the struggle to afford to stay in San Francisco, and the only reason why they're able to do it is because they capture the rent from their accessory dwelling unit downstairs or their duplex next door. So we have to build more housing here in San Francisco.
Shamann.
Thank you for going out of order, Gio. At the end of the day, we definitely should be repealing Costa-Hawkins, and a big reason why is because right now, under current rent control laws, you in San Francisco, you don't have control over what our rent control laws are. The state regulates that. And it's very important that us who are suffering from one of the biggest wealth gaps historically get to make a decision on what we want to be rent control and what we decide is rent control in our communities. So Costa-Hawkins has to be repealed because we need to make that decision on what rent control looks like. And the Board of Supervisors don't have the answer right now in terms of what policy we're going to put in place. But I can guarantee you, I'm going to make sure that once we repeal Costa-Hawkins, and we protect our seniors in single-family homes and make sure that they're protected. We will make sure that people who inherit their homes from their families are protected, because we have a lot of families with single-family homes in our district. So we definitely have to make sure that there are protections in place. But there is no way that the state of California should be telling us here in Potrero Hill, here in Bayview, here in Little Hollywood, here in Dogpatch, here in all of our local areas, what our rent control should look like. And current laws, once somebody leaves rent control, then we lose it forever. So if somebody who is encouraged to go out, get a good paying job, make $90,000 a year, $100,000 a year, if they move, then the next person who desperately needs rent control, we don't get that space for them. And so that's why we have to repeal that, so we can make responsible laws that work for us here in San Francisco, right, and keep our rent control in accordance to what we feel is right for all of us. And we can decide what that looks like together. First, we have to repeal it.
Tony Kelly.
Our current freezing of rent control because of Costa-Hawkins has caused so much pain in this city. So we need to expand our rent controlled stock, and then we can reduce the pressure and reduce the pain for so many people living in the city. Here's what I mean specifically. I've been evicted twice, once by an earthquake, once by an owner moving in. And I've seen too many people forced out of the city, especially because our current rent laws incentivize eviction. Because if someone's been there for a long time, there's such a difference between that and market rate, that there's such a huge gap. It's a huge incentive. And so a member of our Democratic Club has said that the current rent control law is an eviction law. It's an eviction incentive law. So 3 things we can do. 1, when Costa-Hawkins repeal passes, all these big apartment buildings, 400 units, 470 units, 300 units, these ugly buildings built along 3rd Street and 16th Street with corporate deep-pocketed landlords, we can put them under rent control with the international capital market behind them. And then, after we do that and expand our rent-controlled stock, we can at least have the conversation about what's happening in our smaller properties and our older properties. When rent control was originally passed in the city, it wasn't intended to apply to 1 or 2 unit buildings and to ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We did that because in 1995, when Costa-Hawkins passed, we needed to preserve our rent control stock wherever we could. And that has made things painful both for the small property owners and for tenants. So we at least have the conversation about how that's going to work, but right now that conversation is frozen because we're stuck with the stuff we have, and the new stuff can charge whatever they want. So I think there's an important conversation to get a real bargain in there and get more people protected under rent control, and also protect small property owners at the same time, so we can actually have a stable neighborhood where we can keep everyone here in their homes.
All right, thank you. All right, our next question is, this neighborhood, feels like it's a weird place in the city because we hear about a housing crisis, and yet we see all these cranes going up around us. We see all of these units being built. And that building has been driven by the Eastern Neighborhood Plan over the last decade. What is the most important lesson we've learned from the Eastern Neighborhood Plan, and how would we apply that lesson with future developments in the district? Let's begin with Theo Ellington.
So there's 2 things that I think work, or one thing that works really, really well with the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan, and another thing I think we can improve. I'll start with the thing that works really, really well. We have the ability to tap into impact fees. So when a developer comes in to build whatever building they see fit through a community process, we're able to tap into dollars to then go back to community benefits for things like transit, parking options, and housing. There are two downsides. The first is 9 times out of 10, the city comes through and sort of dictates where those dollars go and pretends like it's a community process. And the other thing is that the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan doesn't go down to Bayview, nor does it go down to Viz Valley, nor does it go down to Little Hollywood or Sunnydale for that matter. When we talk about neighborhood planning, we have to have a comprehensive plan for the entire neighborhood. We've got to figure out better transit systems. We've got to build more housing. We have to make sure that the neighborhoods and the southeastern side of the city gets the representation that it deserves. For far too long, this neighborhood has been forgotten about, and we feel it. We feel it here in Potrero Hill. We feel it down in Bayview. We feel it down in Sunnydale. This has to change. As supervisor, I want to make sure we do a comprehensive neighborhood plan that includes all of the neighborhoods within District 10.
Thank you. Those folks out there in the lobby, if you could please try and come on in. We have some space at the back. We have some space over on the sides. It is a full house. Thank you for having me. All right, Tony, let's meet the neighborhoods.
We couldn't understand you.
Oh, sorry about that. Tony.
So two things in particular about the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan that we actually did have in the plan, which didn't get through when it finally passed at the Board of Supervisors. I actually worked on this plan, and I know full well what the mistakes are and what we need to do when we rezone in Bayview and Viz coming up. And I just need to say that, you know, for folks who feel like we're actually solving these issues, I mean, does that feel right to you with our housing pain and our employment market pain, the disparities we have in unemployment? With the Eastern Neighborhoods, it's not successful because we don't have the infrastructure to support the development we have. And there's two things we could have done and did do at the neighborhood level that didn't happen at the legislation level. First, Theo mentioned impact fees. There was also tax increment financing. That was using the increased property taxes from newly rezoned sites and getting just a portion of those increased taxes back into the neighborhood for new bus lines, new schools, new parks, new infrastructure to support the new development. And the other thing, to put some teeth in that, was a clawback provision so that the Board of Supervisors, after 5 years of the plan, could say, we need to make an affirmative finding that yes, there's enough new infrastructure to support the new population that's here, and if there isn't, then building permits stop. So then the developers get to be on the same side as we are. We're all banging on Muni about where's our bus lines? Where's our schools? Where's our parks? We're supposed to have 2 middle schools. Here on Potrero Hill, because of the Eastern Neighborhoods, we have 0. We had to fund our own parks with the Green Benefit District. We're still begging for 2 new bus lines, and Muni admits we need them and deserve them. But we didn't get it because the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan was approved right when the recession happened in 2008, and the mayor at the time and the controller said, no, there's a recession, so all that money's going into the general fund, and we'll talk about it later. And here we are. So we need to put those things in legislation. It's not negotiations with developers. It's not let's make a deal. Theo's right, we need to have planning in Bayview and Viz for rezonings coming up, but we need planning that has the infrastructure built in.
All right, thank you. Shamann.
Well, the one thing I definitely agree with Tony on is the fact that the transportation infrastructure is lacking. It's lacking in the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan. It's lacking in all of the plans that we have for our growth in our communities. And so we need to make sure that we push infrastructure first. And just funny thing, I had a meeting this morning with a representative from SFMTA, and they were talking to me about all these things that they wanted to do to improve stoplights and widen streets. And I said, we've been talking to you about stopping switchbacks. We've been talking to you about bringing another bus line down 3rd Street. We've been talking to you about bringing the 53 back through Potrero Hill so people can get to the grocery store. And you want to talk to me about things that you're going to say you want to listen, but all you gotta do is solve those three things that we've been telling you. So one of the things we gotta do is make sure that when we talk, they listen downtown. And if they don't listen, we call hearings and we make sure that we stay focused on what we need to do and get accomplished right away. Another thing, impact fees are great. And we know about community benefits that come also, but I'm also tired of our homeowners in the Eastern neighborhood having to pay and putting their pool of money together. The city should be paying for those improvements. Developers should be paying for those improvements. And you need somebody who's gonna fight and say, it's great that you can have more amenities because you pull your money together, and I appreciate that and I like that. But I wanna make sure the city does what it's supposed to for all of our neighborhoods and our communities. So we can support, so you can enhance the things that you do with the additional resources that you all have as homeowners in this district and in Potrero Hill. And the last thing, people are right about schools not being here. Well, under my presidency of the Board of Education, we made sure that we got 2 schools coming to the eastern neighborhoods in the bond. One will be in Mission Bay. We had a meeting last night. It'll be built by 2022. That's going to be for, of course, Potrero Hill and Mission Bay residents. And I will make sure that we work hard to turn one of our schools and one of our campuses here into a middle school for our families.
Yes. Thank you. Uzuri.
Okay, I had to make sure it was on this time. So I'm listening, and one of the... You good? You good. Okay. So one of the things that I did not hear is them bringing it back to the community, to ask the community where this money should go. They didn't bring it back to the community to ask them what bus lines are missing. Because the 53 has been gone for a while. And because of the 53 being gone, poor Mr. M had to move out of his house because of the fact there was no more of a bus, so he kept tipping out of his wheelchair. So bringing it back to the community, whether you're low income, a homeowner, or business owner, to actually say, where should these funds be spent? And then once again, not letting the city control everything to where there's always that red tape. It takes 4 years for them to be in a meeting, and so they'll have a meeting, see, about 6 meetings per year, 4 years, and then nothing is done. So they have this bond, and they have the transportation money, and they have the money that's they're putting to the side, but where actually do we get to see it? Have any of you seen it? If you've seen it, raise your hand. Thank you very much. So it's having a committee to actually govern on what they actually do with this money, and to make sure that the money is going into all of the neighborhoods, not just Potrero, not just Sunnydale, but Visitation Valley, Little Hollywood, Dog Patch, Bayview, everywhere. Because the bus lines right now, you built a development at the top of Hunters Point, there's no bus that goes up there. There's a big old hill that people have to walk up. So when they're doing the development, they also have to think about all the different bus lines for people to be able to get to where they are, because everybody does not have cars. Thank you.
All right. If you have a blue question card that you want to come up here, please pass it to an aisle and folks will come by and pick it up. So we started to touch on this in the last answer, and it's about the need for infrastructure in both this neighborhood and this district. The first question about infrastructure that we'd like to ask is that what development comes to need for additional open space? What are your top 3 open space priorities for District 10? And if you could only fund one of them, which would you select and why? We'll begin with Shamann.
So my top 3 projects are, of course, Jackson Park, which is here at Potrero Hill, India Basin, and Hurst Playground in Sunnydale. And I would say that if I had to pick one today, right now, because of how much is utilized by the entire city of San Francisco, because of proximity, because of great weather, I would say that Jackson Park is the park that we need to make sure that we revitalize and make sure all the improvements that are needed are there. We have softball fields that people are using. We have a facility that has classes during the day and also on weekends, and families. It's a family hub. The playground, in my opinion, needs to be improved. And so we have folks coming from all across San Francisco. We have high schools and middle schools utilizing Jackson Park. I know that the developer in Rankin Park building are going to make sure that they have the resources to take care of India Basin, along with the bond that we'll be pushing hard for in 2019. I know that Hurst Playground, along with the Hope SS resources that we're fighting for, and other things that I know are promised for our community from community benefits agreements that I'll make sure happen. So I think Jackson Park, because of utilization, because of proximity, because of weather, because of how many families utilize that great facility, that's the one that I would prioritize first. And though, although all of them are very important, and I've been working hard to make sure that we get the resources for all of them, that's why we need to make sure that that bond is increased in 2019. But that will be the order for me.
Thank you. Uzuri.
Hello. I am along with Shamann on this one. I've been working with a young lady for the bond for Jackson Park. There's a school right by Jackson Park. I actually want to look at it for Potrero Hill as well, because Potrero Hill Potrero Hill Rec Center is another one that's been utilized. It used to be utilized a lot by the families, and then when the back gate got shut, it kind of like ostracized a lot of the families that lived down in the public housing. And so I would like to actually take that bond, and even though you said pick one, I would split it and pick two, and half would go to Jackson Park and the other half would go up to Potrero Hill, to the Potrero Hill Rec Center. And that's how I would do it, because I think that would be really fair, because there are a lot of families that actually utilize both parks. There are a lot of children that utilize both parks, and there is a lot of great weather in both parks. And there is actually the field in both parks, as well as, and we have to keep the playgrounds with a swing. You have to have swings in the playground. For us grown folks who actually want to be kids every now and then, I'm so serious in my brain. And then have the doggy park, and I would actually want to separate the doggy park for the little dogs and the big dogs, because what happens is that a lot of the big dogs play a little bit rougher with the little dogs. So I would actually take I'm so serious. I would actually take the doggy park and split it into two and have one for the smaller dogs and one for the bigger dogs.
Thank you. Tony. You can sit up. It's a random order. You got to be ready on your toes. This is true.
I'm going to list 5 things, and I think I can do more than one thing at once. So I'll look to do all these things, get them started within the next year. First, sort of, not in particular order, rezone Star King open space, so it's actually open space rather than housing. So we can just keep it as open space forever. Because right now it's still zoned as housing, which means it's under threat of development all the time. 2, Blue Phelps Park in Bayview needs to be expanded. There's a lot of unused space around it. We can expand it, make it more neighborhood serving, make it more accessible and larger, and get greenways leading into it from all over the neighborhood. That's actually a small process. It's not a huge financial investment, and we should start that process as soon as we can. Third, Schlage Lock, where there's a community process to determine where the open space would be, and then that space has been getting sold off to developers and reshaped because of developer demands. The community needs to go first. We need to lock in where the open space is going to be, get a plan, and then we can get to seriously funding it, and then the open space can happen around it. It's been a big disappointment to the community in Viz Valley. We need to step up for them. Fourth, Jackson Playground. I do want to expand the bond or make sure that the bond includes that. That's a thing that definitely for next year for funding, and so if you want to say that's the first priority because it's in the bond, so be it. But I think the first priority is actually a bigger one and it takes more time, is I want to revive the town center plan in Bayview, right at the center of Bayview, from Mendel Plaza all the way up a block. It's about 3.5 blocks of public sites, a lot of parking lots, a lot of plaza space. Let's make it into green space that actually serves the community and is really becoming a real center for everyone. Now it needs a real community process to make sure everyone's on board with it and really invested in what happens in there in the programming. But there was a beautiful design as a starting point done by folks at the Housing Development Corporation a number of years ago. We start with that point, work with the community. It's such a lot of land that we're not really using as well as it could be to benefit a huge community of 38,000 people. We need a significant park like that.
Thank you. And Theo.
Thank you, JR. I'm going to actually list 3 things, like the question asked. I think we all agree that Jackson Park is definitely a priority for this district. It should be on the bond. So if there are any folks and friends of Jackson Park in the audience, you've got your thumbs up from the group here. But I want to talk about 2 other things that I think is very, very important. I'll preface that by saying the parks in this district are terrible. And as I go across the city, and I see nice parks in other neighborhoods, compared to the parks here, we've got homeless people, we've got trash, we've got needles. So we first of all need to clean the existing parks, or figure out a plan to clean up our current open space. And we can start at Martin Luther King Park in Bayview. That is a state-of-the-art, at one time was a state-of-the-art park. It's got a swimming pool, it's got a playground, it's got a softball field, and yet it's a hotbed for homeless activity and for rampant drug use. The second thing I would do is look at some models in other cities. Brooklyn Bridge Park, phenomenal. About 15 acres of open space on the waterfront. If you look at neighborhoods like Dogpatch, whose population is set to triple in the matter of years, we want to make sure that the families moving in have access to parks and open space. We've got a beautiful waterfront. Let's start to give folks access to it by creating a publicly accessible park.
All right, thank you. Shifting gears to the other dire need for this neighborhood in transit, I asked you to name a major transit infrastructure improvement you would champion as the District 10 Supervisor, and then what smaller improvements would you support while we wait for major investments to come online? Let's begin with Tony Kelly on this question.
I think it's got to be 3rd Street. The small thing is bringing back the darn 15 line. A real hero, a real workhorse, went right up the waterfront, and especially with the coming T-line, going through to Chinatown and underground, we really want that straight shot up there and up the waterfront. The other thing related to that, and that may sound contradictory to bringing back the 15, is that 3rd Street can't fit everything it has. And I think we have to finally admit that we got the planning for that wrong back when the T-line was created, because you can't have pedestrians and trees and sidewalks and curbs and parking and bikes and trucks and trains and cars all within a limited amount of space. Because then you have what in the transit world we call conflicts, and conflicts means injuries and death. So we need to figure out where that's going to go, and it might mean removing some parking, and it might mean moving bikes off, moving trucks off, trying to figure out what to do with Lane Street as well as Indiana, and whatever routes we can do. But we actually have plenty of streets in this city. So trying to put everything on 3rd is just a sucker's bet. And I know one possible solution is to bury the train and put it underground, but let's talk about things we can do within the next lifetime. Okay? And so I think we need to have a real serious reckoning about what to do with 3rd Street, and that leads to a lot of transit things, but I think that's the big conversation, is what do we want it to be? And I think that's where community planning comes in, because the rezoning coming up next in Bayview is 3rd Street. And so it gives us a chance to plan, not ban, and say, what do we want it to be? Let's go as a community, let's go first. What do we want to see on 3rd? At the town center, down the industrial corridor, at the north part, right near 1550 Evans. What do we want to see? And then developers can follow.
Shamann.
Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad I live off of 3rd Street. I'm so glad I work off of 3rd Street. I'm so glad I'm from that community and have talked to people, not just during this election, but spend time with them. And taking the T underground is something that definitely needs to happen. If we want to make sure that that Warriors traffic does not affect us as negatively as it could with the Giants and Warriors game, so the T needs to go underground. It would be better for drivers, it would be better for cyclists, we would have less cars on the road. And when you come from the projects, public housing, where you were told you weren't going to be anything, you were told you were not going to accomplish anything, then you don't have that cannot do spirit. We can get the T underground sooner than later. We have not prioritized transportation in the southeast sector of San Francisco, and we need somebody to do that. I truly believe that that can happen sooner than people think. You're telling me in this world-class city that can get the Central Subway, that can get the Caltrans station, that we, all the power of us in our district, cannot get the T underground if that's what we so choose to make happen? Yes, we can. Yes, we will. And so that's one thing that I would say we need to improve for longer term. Right away, we need express bus service run through all of our communities, going to downtown, going to BART stations, connecting to commercial corridors, and making that happen right away. And yes, we need another bus line, bringing the 15 back for culture, going down 3rd Street, so that when that institutionally racist switchback practice continues to happen, that we have people who can still get home to their children, people who can still get to work, and people who still can connect with their families when the T goes backwards in Dogpatch and we still live in Bayview and Sunnydale and Visitation Valley. So we need to take that T in the ground. And together we can accomplish these big ideas. And I believe everybody in this room and this community can do that working together, because I know we have the gumption in this room to get that done.
I will note that Tony Kelly has played his challenge card. Tony has 30 seconds to ask your question to Shamann. Shamann will have 1 minute to respond.
Hey, Shamann, I get it about the T, about wanting to get the T underground. It would be great if it was a subway. It would be great if it went through all the way. We'd have fewer collisions on the street. But just looking at the experience with Chinatown and the Central Subway and South of Market and the Central Subway, I don't know about rushing it, because I think there's thousands of merchants, both in Chinatown and Soma, and then along 3rd Street, who are going to have a big issue with burying things and doing all the digging and construction and all that, and sentencing the neighborhood to that for X number of years and rushing through and starting that. So I really want to think about the consequences of jumping in on that.
Shamann Walton.
He just gave examples of things that are actually getting done. Thank you, Tony. And one thing I want to note, Supervisor Peskin put legislation together to make sure that while construction was happening, the merchants get taken care of and that they get resources from revenue loss. And you better believe that if elected on November 6th, I will make sure that our merchants are taken care of during construction as well. I was also told we couldn't build affordable housing for educators, and we got it done. Our first lot is going to be built at Francis Scott Key. I was also told that we couldn't decrease teacher turnover in our schools in the Southeast sector, and teacher turnover has decreased, and we have more stable educators in our classrooms every year. I was told that with the teacher shortage, we couldn't fill all our classrooms with the beginning of the school year, and we've been able to do it with only 4 vacancies the last 2 years on the first day of school in a school district of 56,000 students. I don't have that same can't-do attitude, because we've done it, and with the gumption and the spirit, we'll do it together.
Thank you. Theo.
I will not talk about the T-train going underground. And I don't think that any of these sort of unmet transit needs are short-term solutions. I think they all are going to take a heavy lift. But 2 things that I would bring up. First is parking in this neighborhood. Parking in this district. It is a shame when folks come home at night, they are unable to find parking. It is a shame that folks come from outside of this neighborhood and park in our communities and commute downtown. It is a shame that in certain parts of this district, we've got to park on sidewalks instead of on the streets. So parking is a problem in this neighborhood. The second thing that I will mention is we've got to complete the entire transit network. So yes, we know the T-train sucks. We do have the infrastructure, however, to improve the T-lane, the T-train line. We do have the infrastructure to ensure that the T runs faster and that the T is reliable. But when I say complete the transit infrastructure, I mean water taxis. We've got 8 waterfront development projects happening. You can't tell me in the Bay Area that we can't figure out how to have adequate water service like Seattle, like the East Coast. We're a 21st century city. We need transit options. I would also say, and I'm going to add another one to this, JR, Illinois Street bike lane needs work. I have heard countless stories and actually have seen with my own eyes that you can't have a cement truck riding down the same street and you got someone on a bicycle. We've got to fix that fast. We've got to provide as many transit options on this side of town as possible.
Thank you. Uzuri, Pease-Greene.
So I too am not touching the underground train, just so you know. So it's a lot of problems inside San Francisco. I know that just parking on Dakota Street alone, we block each other in because the other one knows what time the person's gonna leave, so we can move our car at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning so that person can go to work. We won't even talk about Sunnydale and how their parking is at nighttime. It is like a freaking parking lot. And it's even worse with the developing going on. Some of the short term is actually having shuttles because like I said, so the 53 is no longer here. So there is no bus service on the Uzuri side. There is no bus service. When you get around this corner, there is no bus service over there either. There is no bus service in certain parts of San Francisco, especially if you go to the top of Hunters Point where they built the new homes, the new buildings. Well, when you go up there, once you get off that 44, there is no bus that goes up that hill. So for the short term, it's like having shuttles going like they used to do the 53, where the shuttles are going from 3rd Street up into the different developments, going from Potrero Hill over to people to get their groceries down to 15th Street and over to the Safeway. And then in the long term is that looking at what did not work and scrapping that, and then looking at what is working and what is possible working. I really like the idea of water taxis because I just was in Washington and I love their water taxi service. And that's how a lot of people do commute, is on the water taxi. So we have the means to do it. It's just like actually taking the time and listening to the community and not letting those that work up in these offices who never come out into the community and who never ride the bus in the first place because they have cars in the first place and they have a garage to put their car in. So that's some of the things that we have to really look at.
Thank you. One last question on the issue of infrastructure, and we'll take a minute each on these responses. And we'll start with you, Uzuri. But, we, just as we've done, spend a lot of time in this neighborhood talking about transit and open space. What other public facility improvements do you think we need in this part of town? 1 minute.
Honestly, our schools and our public housing right now, right smack dab right now. Our schools, I just looked at Daniel Webster and one part of it got totally painted and the other part, somebody pointed out to me and they were like, so why didn't they do this part? Some of our schools really need to have to be redone. And then our public housings right now are atrocious. And even though they're being redeveloped, some of the redevelopment is not gonna happen for another 10 to 15 years. So is a person supposed to live like that for the next 10 or 15 years? And the problem is that they're top heavy and there's not enough workers on the ground. And so it's hiring more workers. And there are a lot of people that live in the different communities that are painters, that are plumbers, that are electricians, that are carpenters, and that can be trained and give them and put them to work and let them work and have a job. And so we really need to look at our schools because it looks pretty on the outside, but you need to go all the way into the inside as well. That's my minute.
Theo.
Nice.
All right.
So, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. Besides transit open space, what other public facility improvements do we need in this part of town?
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. So I'm going to talk by neighborhood and give 3 examples of what needs to happen in this district immediately. The first in Dogpatch, a community center. I mentioned earlier that the neighborhood is getting ready to triple in size, yet there are no community facilities that are able to accommodate the rising population in Dogpatch. In Bayview, we need a quality grocery store. We've been harping on this for years. I've got the perfect location at 1550 Evans. My opponent here to my left does not agree there needs to be a grocery store. My far left does not think there needs to be a grocery store in District 10. The last thing I will say is our schools. Our schools in this district are terrible as well. We have the worst performing schools for Black and brown students in California. That's a problem. We should be outraged that our schools are underperforming in a 21st century city like San Francisco.
I will note that Shamann Walton has played his challenge card. He gets 30 seconds to ask Theo a question. Theo will have 1 minute to respond.
I know as we get closer to election day, people start making up stuff and creating lies. So let me be very clear. I've been a leading champion for a grocery store in this district. I fought for Prop O so we could increase commercial space so we could have anchor businesses, bring grocery stores, because we were promised stadiums and grocery stores and Prop G a long time ago. So I'm 100% in favor of a grocery store.
Question?
I'm also 100%, if I got 30 seconds, I'm also in favor of making sure that when we have a decades-old promise and say we're going to have a state-of-the-art community facility in the community, that we give that community that state-of-the-art community facility that we promised. So we're fighting for a STEM program, working with City College. There's going to be a state-of-the-art community center that has all the amenities that were promised decades ago. Dr. Espinola Jackson's legacy fought for that. So my question to Theo is, why don't you care?
I know that we have a small timing issue we have last week, but we'll give Theo an extra 15 seconds on the minutes of
Well, thank you. I got to dig through that response to find the question now. Let me be clear about what I mean when we need a grocery store. We need a grocery store 10 years ago. And that's the problem. We've got a prime opportunity to ensure that there is a quality grocery store in Bayview Hunters Point. We don't have that. We've been promised that. We've seen grocery stores move in and out. We need a grocery store in District 10, and 1550 Evans is the perfect place for it.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, you'll have the opportunity to express your opinions in the ballot box. Very good. But right now, what I would like to do is ask Tony Kelly what other public facility improvements you think we need on this part of town.
JR, we're on 1 minute.
We're on 1 minute.
Hey Theo, I thought I was your colleague on the far left. What happened? Your left, my left, your left.
Yes.
Two things quickly. One, our vacant units in public housing. There are evictions, I don't know if they're technically called evictions, but there are evictions happening in the rebuild in Sunnydale right now. There are questions about that in Potrero as well. And if you're my neighbor today, I want you to be my neighbor tomorrow. And I know that the rebuild is causing great pressure and uncertainty for neighbors about where they're going to live and how they're going to live. And we need to rehab as many of our units as quickly as possible so it can be a safety valve so we can actually house everybody instead of pushing people out on the streets, in hospitals, in jails. The cost is simply too great. Second, isn't pollution cleanup an infrastructure issue? The Hunters View Community Mothers and Fathers Committee made a toxic inventory of Bayview Hunters Point in 2004, listing 80 different sources of pollution that are shortening our lives. There's been action on hardly any of it. And we need to commit seriously to pollution cleanup in a neighborhood which has a 14-year shorter life expectancy than other neighborhoods in the city.
Uzuri is using her challenge. 30 seconds for her question, 1 minute for Tony's response.
Okay, so, slide that. Okay, so my comment and question is this, is that I do not like the use of the rebuild for Potrero specifically, that people are being evicted because of the rebuild, because that is not true. That is not true at all. And so I'm standing fast on that because a lot of people have moved to Alice Griffin, a lot of people have moved to Hunters View, a lot of people have moved out into, a couple of people have moved out and bought their own house.
30 seconds. Tony, 1 minute to respond.
I get the gist. There are people who are living in Potrero who are not there today, and the Housing Authority doesn't know where they are. They've admitted that. They've said, no, they've admitted that. They said that straight up to residents at Potrero Terrace and Annex. And in Sunnydale in particular, but I'll focus on Sunnydale. If you want to focus on Sunnydale, I'll focus on Sunnydale. There's senior housing being built. They're asking seniors to sign leases to new units, but they can't bring their families in. So if they sign that lease to go into the senior unit, where does the family go? They don't go into public housing anymore. Second, there are folks who are straight up being evicted. I was down there today hearing about this firsthand from folks who are being evicted. This happened at Hunters View. I've talked to folks who were evicted. The city denies it because it's just redefining tenants in good standing. And even if they're not on the lease, this is my point. Even if you're not on the lease, if you're my neighbor today, I want you to be my neighbor tomorrow, because what is the cost in our out-migration of black and brown families and everything else.
Thank you, honey. Uzuri is using her rebuttal card. She gets 1 minute.
1 minute?
1 minute.
Okay, so let's be perfectly clear that right now, Housing Authority has been having a add to lease campaign, and they have been encouraging people to add people to their lease. There are a lot of seniors that don't want their family members coming to live with them, so that is their loophole to be like, can't come live with me, because they're tired of them mooching on them in the first doggone place. And if you don't add the people to your lease, no, they can't come live with you. So that is their choice, not housing authorities, not the developer. That is their choice, and people knew this going in. Now, if people haven't been coming to the meetings, which a lot of people haven't, then that is why there is a lot of us in this room that have been trying to educate people. So I stand again is that when you go and hear from one person, you have to be perfectly clear in understanding that. Some people tell fibs because they fell through the crack and they didn't handle their business in the first place. There is an add to lease campaign right now. There have been meetings that PHTA has been having every month just to have...
Thank you, Uzuri. Shamann, what other public infrastructure improvements do we have? 1 minute.
So I definitely want to emphasize the word public because we're talking about a public infrastructure project, and I would love for us to have public grocery stores across the district, but that's not what we're talking about here. But I think what we need in our district is a state-of-the-art training, STEM, and arts facility that provides opportunities and trainings for people to connect straight from high school to jobs and get opportunities in the trades, that works with our schools like STEM schools like Willie Brown, our schools like Daniel Webster, who our parents fought so hard, and rest in peace to Dina Fisher, who fought so hard to build a quality school. We need a place to feed for our young people so that they can go on to get higher education, get access to skills, and the things that they need to be successful. Our young people in this district deserve the same types of opportunities that are happening in other areas of San Francisco. So a state-of-the-art STEM, art, and training facility for our young folks. That has to happen. And I can tell you how to get it funded in a minute.